So the same thing always happens when a new device launches. The media gets review units ahead of the official launch, and we get to use them while we write our review. Then the press embargo lifts, every outlet posts their reviews and videos at the same time, writers and commenters go back and forth, and it's a huge frenzy of opinion and buzz for about a day, and then it all goes away. Sure, there's some follow-up coverage, but after that initial blast, almost no one revisits the device to see how well it's aged, because we're all on to the next big thing already.
So let's do something about it. Let's take a look at a phone months after its release when it's not shiny and new anymore. I'm Taylor Martin with Pocket Now, this is the Google Nexus 5, and this is episode 32 of After the Buzz. Obsolescence is mostly what we look at with the After the Buzz series. Has a phone fared well against the test of time? Do its specs still compare with the latest and greatest? But this particular episode is different due to one key differentiator, a single brand name, Nexus. The Nexus 5 from the very start was built with legs, mainly because it's one of the very few smartphones on the market that appeals to the nerdiest of nerds, and the Android purists who want the unadulterated Google experience on a phone. But software and name aren't the only thing playing to the Nexus 5's advantage. Price is a very firm bullet point that solidifies the Nexus 5's spot near the top of the charts. Do these things still uphold the Nexus 5's viability? Let's find out. The design of the Nexus 5 was never a problem with most. Sure, it's understated and doesn't try to be anything more than it actually is, a powerful yet affordable smartphone. To adhere to the latter aspect, costs had to be cut somewhere, and design and hardware was ultimately the only place to do that. The phone is still very attractive in its own right. The all-black model, two-tone glossy black and matte white Stormtrooper edition, as Marques Brownlee calls it, and the bright red model are all very distinguished, thanks to the large camera cutout around back, colored earpiece speaker, and of course the Nexus branding. But there isn't anything particularly amazing or impressive about the design. We're okay with that, for a number of reasons. Mainly, its internals have managed to stay relatively current in the 5 months it's been around. The chipset inside is a Snapdragon 800 with a quad-core Cray 400 CPU clocked at 2.3 GHz, and it also has the standard Adreno 330 GPU. It has 2GB of RAM, either 16 or 32GB of fixed storage, and an 8MP camera with optical image stabilization. The 2300 mAh battery is as mediocre as it sounds, and the rest is pretty standard. Wi-Fi AC, NFC, LTE, Qi wireless charging, and Bluetooth 4.0. The 4.95-inch True HD IPS Plus display is also a bit sterile. The 1080p resolution is great, making an overall density of 445 pixels per inch. But where it suffers is muted color reproduction and black levels. Truthfully, it's actually more accurate than a lot of other displays, but we've been trained as consumers to lust over excessively saturated tones. The contrast levels are a tad low and viewing angles could be better, but if you consider the price, it's really difficult to complain about the display. In short, the specs are still on point and it's certainly not the worst looking phone around, display or design. Of course, it doesn't feel all that great in the hand either, but this isn't a $700 smartphone, it's half that price. All things considered, it's still a great value from the hardware perspective. The software side of things has actually improved, and as per usual, it's a high point for a Nexus and Google Play Edition devices. The phone originally launched with the core version of KitKat, Android 4.4.0, which came with a bevy of newer, tiny features, like printing support, immersion mode, native emoji support, SMS integration with Hangouts, and a Yellow Pages-like dialer. Some of those things took some time to get used to, like the business search function within the dialer, and some we still haven't used today, like wireless printing. But they're all nice features to have at your disposal anyway. Also, at the time of its launch, the Nexus 5 had a unique launcher and Google Play experience entirely to itself, the Google Now launcher, which replaced the leftmost home screen with Google Now. This too took some getting used to, especially the large icons, but it didn't take us long to fall in love with a launcher built around one of our favorite Google services. Unfortunately, it's no longer specific to the Nexus 5, but available on most Nexus and Google Play Edition hardware. The Nexus 5 has since been updated twice and now sits at 4.4.2, while the next version is rumored to be in testing. The first update was primarily a camera fix, which we'll get to in a bit. The most recent update brought some bug fixes, some better stability, and some more camera improvements. The software is still one of the biggest draws for the Nexus 5, especially for hardcore enthusiasts. If you're after a bare-bones, no-nonsense software experience, the Nexus 5 should still be near the top of your list, alongside the many Google Play Edition devices. Part of that pure Android experience is the full effect of Project Butter. The phone still runs incredibly smoothly. Everything from opening apps, entering or exiting the app drawer, and scrolling is snappy and fluid. Pair that with the raw horsepower of the Snapdragon 800, and this phone will perform with the best of the best in gaming, media playback, multitasking, and pretty much anything else you can throw at it. This phone was built with enthusiasts and power users in mind. It's designed to handle a heavy workload, unless you're talking stamina. Battery life has never been the Nexus 5's strong suit. It still isn't. In Michael's initial review, he was able to typically last an entire day on a single charge, but that also meant crawling in on fumes towards the end of the day. Little has changed since our first experience with the Nexus 5. A 2300 mAh battery just doesn't do this phone justice. Call quality, like before, is still rather impressive. And we've been running on T-Mobile's LTE network here in the Charlotte metro area for the last few days. As expected, we aren't complaining about the double-digit speeds. We've peaked around 14.5 megabits per second down and 4 megabits per second up. With all the camera software updates, it's hard to say the camera hasn't improved much. It has. Color reproduction seems to be more accurate and vibrant, and pictures overall more lively. The biggest improvements were brought to the actual image capture, snuffing out the shutter lag. Capture now happens in an instant, but while the best pictures taken with the Nexus 5 are likely to be better than when it first launched, it's still pretty hit or miss, especially in low light, despite the optical image stabilization. Images are more vibrant than before, even if they sometimes err on the cool side. Point being, it's far from the worst camera ever, but it still isn't the absolute best. It's about par for the course in Android land. So what's the verdict? The Nexus 5 is just as great as it was when it launched in November, if not marginally better. That's due in part to the nature of the name of the device, rapid software updates, and fixes for the camera software. Throw in the fact that the price starts at just $349 sans contract, it's hard not to recommend this phone to someone looking for a bargain. It's not exactly the best deal anymore thanks to devices like the Moto G, but in terms of value, what you get for $350 or $400, you honestly can't ask for more than what the Nexus 5 offers. And that's why we're still just as enamored with the Nexus 5 today as we were 5 months ago. Or maybe it's just because it speaks to our inner nerd. Either way, it's a killer smartphone for the price, and if you're looking for raw horsepower for not a lot of money, this is the phone you should buy. The visceral Google experience is just icing on the cake. Folks, that's going to do it if you enjoyed this episode of After the Buzz. Be sure to click the thumbs up button below, and of course subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this one in the future. Be sure to follow us in all the usual places, Twitter, Facebook, and Google+, at Pocket Now. I'm Taylor Martin, you can find me on Twitter at CasperTech, and I will see you next time.